And we are live. And everybody will be shocked to see that there's 3 out of 4. Something may be happening. I don't know. Maybe somebody's a little late and rhymes with way. Oh, there he is.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, you made it.
He doesn't hear us yet. He doesn't hear us ranking on him yet.
No, you should continue to do so, though.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, he's a celebrity here. We got to have him.
There it is.
Right, because he has 162,000 subs, so he's like, here it comes.
Oh yeah.
I set him up because every time I mention his number, he's like, no, it's 166,437. So.
It's 164,962. Okay.
That's great. That's great.
Oh my God.
I'm 20,000 plus and hovering. It just does that whole.
It goes up and goes down. Nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Often in the same show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and don't you love every time you get that little message from YouTube? Oh, by the way, we're adjusting subscriber counts and removing false accounts. It's like, thanks, jerks. I don't need your help. Yeah. You don't need to do that.
Right.
or how about that? Your channel didn't perform as well this past 30 days. Thanks.
Aren't you a loser?
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of which, we were opening up. Joe, Good Lawgic, was telling us about Rudy Giuliani.
Yes. So.
Oh yeah.
So I when I first heard the news, like most MAGA types, I assumed that this was just cancel culture at work. And New York, the justice system is very liberal tilted, and. In fact, it's an elected position when you become a judge, and you have to be on
it's a new record. We're already at limited. We went yellow in 2 minutes.
So you said Giuliani.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All my videos uploaded now are automatically yellow. I have to always do so. It is what it is.
Wow.
Oh my God! It's already under review. I didn't even hit the under review.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this might help. What I'm going to say,
guys, I wore the damn shirt for the day.
That's my shirt because YouTube rejected me. So that
they rejected you for monetization.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they rejected me. I need help from the audience here. You got to support me. Patreon, locals.
Did they give you a reason?
Dangerous.
They said I'm controversial and potentially harmful to viewers. I was thinking I should make that my banner.
What?
I'm potentially harmful to viewers.
Well, they got you confused with Anton LaVey.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's true. They're like, this guy is going to put people in the church of Satan.
This has been happening though, because like I told you, my channel, like I went to my thing and all my videos had been human reviewed. I didn't ask for any of them. They had been like human reviewed. So I was like, oh shit, something's happening. So
I want to ask you guys, because I can't reapply for 30 days. And when I went back through the videos that they ever looked at, I found a video called The Reichstag Fire that I put out right after on January 7th, like January 6th, I was working on it and finished it, uploaded January 7th. And the whole video is a reading about history, what happened in 1933 with the Reichstag fire. And I spliced in media video footage of the insurgents at the Capitol. And basically all I did was I just read about history and what happened in the Reichstag fire and the ramifications and how that basically gave, the National Socialists the ability to invoke all these different rules and take an authoritarian position. And because I identified it that night as this is going to be an opening for the left to basically say we need to clamp down on these crazy militant right extremists. So, and all I did was I read history. It was just a 3-minute reading with video. And
I'll tell you already what the problem is.
So they said that was controversial and potentially harmful. They restricted children from being able to watch it. So if you're a kid watching this, please don't watch it because you're not allowed.
Very, very dangerous.
Wow. Yes.
Joe, here's what it is. I've had Ford Fisher on. Mm-hmm. Ford Fisher is one of the guys who does raw footage at all the riots. He was at Capitol. He was at all the Antifa. That's all he does. He goes around the country has multiple cameras and just sits there recording, videographer. His footage, he can't show on his site. They keep demonetizing him, shutting it down, everything else. The same footage is being shown on CNN and Fox News on YouTube.
Oh yeah,
So
that's it. Yeah, that happens to me too.
Here's what it is. You are not CNN and Fox News, so you're not allowed to show that footage. It is offensive coming from you or Ford Fisher, even though he took it, and you're both dangerous. But the proper authoritative source can show the same footage.
So my question to all three of you gentlemen is this. I'm not going to get monetized. I don't think I'm going to be monetized as long as that video is up. I think they're going to use that. I mean, they use the exact same language to deny me. And my question is, I sort of felt like on a principle thing, I'm compromising my integrity by taking it down. I am very proud of the fact that I identified it as a Reichstag fire within hours of the event happening. And, you know, and artistically, it's probably one of the best pieces I've ever done. So my question is, if you're in my shoes, you take that thing down and hope to get monetized?
I would put it on Locals, and I'd make a video on how I'm taking the video down to put on Locals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go to my Locals so you can see the real story, see the real content, and please support me there.
Good thinking.
Yeah.
I like it.
The answer is yes, absolutely do that.
Yeah, I think this whole thing about, like, I was watching VidCon or Vid Summit or whatever they do, you know, when they have the you know, everybody gets together and they give you the tips on how to YouTube. And one of the things that they were saying is that, you know, a lot of people want to fight with YouTube, but if you really want to make money from this platform, you got to work within their rules. You got to kind of treat YouTube as your boss, and certain things that they don't like. If you want to make money, they're saying we're not going to do it that way. And I know it's like, oh, but you're selling out, but you know, we're in this to make money. And if YouTube is the boss and we got to play within these rules, then unfortunately that's what it is. Like all my police content, I'm moving off of YouTube and putting it right to Locals. Nate the lawyer at locals.com. That's where it's all going to be. And you know, and people who want to watch that can go and watch that on Locals and don't have to watch it on YouTube.
And my thinking is, and along with what you gentlemen are saying, is the same way we go along with YouTube rules, that there are certain phrases and words we will not say because the stream will blow up and they just don't want to hear just, you know, simple
like Giuliani
terms, I guess.
Yeah.
AJ.
Rudy.
It always says AJ.
So this is the same thing. We're playing ball basically, though. You know, like Nate was saying. So.
Well, unfortunately, when there's an authoritarian control on speech, you have two options. You either comply as best as you can with the authoritarian policy for the purposes of keep speaking, or you don't get to speak at all. Yeah. I mean, that's how it ends up going. It's a really unfortunate thing, but you know, we know there's subjects that we can't cover in a full and open way. Those subjects are the election and the pandemic. You just cannot cover them in any open way on YouTube. You can't do it. And so the question is, do you make one video that sacrifices your ability to cover those things or to cover anything? Or do you dance around those rules as much as possible and let people know these are the rules? You know why I'm not talking about this. You know why I'm talking about this in this way. And if you want to have a more full discussion, you know, we have to do that elsewhere. But I want to make sure to keep informing people about what's going on. And so it's like, yeah, you can burn it all down over one topic in one video, or you can work within those rules to the best of your ability. And it's and all the while we fight for the rules to be open, and we wait for those reports of certain labs and stuff like that to keep coming out until it's okay to talk about them.
Speaking of opening things up, did you guys see that lawsuit that was filed last week by Dylan Law Group and Ron Coleman on behalf of Rogan and Hanley against Twitter?
I heard about it, but I haven't looked into it yet.
Seen it.
Someone told me it's fire.
It is. I went through it line by line on one of my streams this week, and it's very clear. It is really clear that just if these allegations are half of them are true, that it's one thing for the reason it's a big deal is it's one thing for Twitter to say, okay, we identify as liberals or leftists, we have a private company, we want to run our things in a way that will promote liberalism and invariably the Democratic Party. But what this lawsuit alleges is that there were laws passed in California forming a commission called the Oversight of Election Committee, or Cybersecurity, Oversight of Election Cybersecurity. And Twitter created a hotline, like a bat phone, from secretaries of state and from various leftist leaders that you can contact directly Twitter and say, this is a post that needs to come down. This is a post that needs to come down. And they basically abdicated their own decision making, pretty much, that 98% of the time, if they had this direct email line, and they basically said, if you see information you don't like, notify Twitter and they will strike it. And that's why, and it wasn't just Twitter. I mean, there's also, Twitter affected Rogan and Hanley, which is why Twitter is a named defendant. But there was a hotline for Facebook, for Google, presumably for YouTube. And the discovery that's going to come out here is really is going to make it clear that social media is not just independently leftist, but an actual arm of the Democratic Party. And that obviously could have genuine ramifications as far as regulations that come down, and their ability. If you're a state actor, then you have to question, how do they have a right to limit free speech? The same way you can't limit it in any sort of government building, you can't limit free speech. So that really throws some shade on their ability to say, well, we're a private company and we can limit free speech however we like, because if you're a state actor, obviously the rules are very different. So you guys really should, I think you should check it out.
Yeah, it's on my list. The quasi-state actor doctrine, it's should be more straightforward than it is. That's the only problem with it. And if there are people we want testing that doctrine, it's people like Harmeet Dillon and Ron Coleman. I mean, very, very good lawyers with good novel theories about how to approach these things, who fought very big companies and governments in the past. They're great people to do it. And I think that the state actor doctrine in regards to social media needs to be pushed and molded. And that's a case that can go all the way to the Supreme Court. Because right now, I mean, the state actor doctrine, you can have an organization that is, I think, even 100% government funded. But if it's still called a private entity and the government doesn't ask it to do something directly and specifically, that is also a particularly government function, it's not technically a state actor. So it really has to do with those requests, and it becomes what seems like an easy analysis becomes pretty difficult.
Well, I think it's always going to be difficult, because you have religious organizations that get government funding, right? And we want, like the Catholic Church. We wouldn't call them state actors. And right. So if I'm not sure if Facebook's getting funding, but they may be. And plus you have other organizations that have contracts with the government. So the state actor doctrine, it's always going to be tangled, because the government has to work with private companies to do things, and private companies have to work with the government to accomplish goals. And when you have that type of hybrid, are they working as state actors, or are they working as independent people for, to help the government launch its purpose? I do think, though, the problem when it comes to YouTube, Google, Facebook is the too big to fail problem, right? It comes to the point where if you own the entire market for speech in a particular area, and that's what it's come down to, right? Facebook, Twitter, and Google own speech more or less online. If you're not speaking within those domains, then people are not going to hear your voice. How is it now? Are they at a point where, since they have this huge piece of the market where they can be regulated, because now this is detrimental to speech? Nobody's out there speaking on the street corners anymore, right? All the speech is occurring here online. I don't know how you regulate that, and I don't even know if you're allowed to, because the Constitution, you can't just quasi say, well, these are now state actors. You have to have some reason, and I don't know if the reason that you guys have laid out are just convincing enough, because then I could just make the same argument about the Catholic Church. They got money, they get this, they get funding, they get everything from the government, but I wouldn't call them state actors.
Well, I'm not
getting appointed. And I'm just saying, I'm throwing that out there from left field, because she's the one who made her bones going after Amazon with the essay when she was at Yale. And she's very, very, very antitrust. So I feel like changes may be coming, but maybe it's going to come from like 5 different directions at once. Like the Coleman lawsuit, a bit of antitrust on the side, just to where you can't beat any of them. You're right, too big to fail, but maybe a death by 1,000 cuts.
Smart. Yeah. That's probably a good point.
When you say too big to fail, you mean the same way that banks were bailed out in 2008, so they're going to pass legislation to protect these social
No,
media
I'm
companies?
saying he's saying the network effect. Essentially, it is so giant in scale. I mean, they can't even really grow anymore because they pretty much have consumed the entire population, and that's a problem too. That's why Facebook had to buy Instagram, because Instagram is going to come up and eat its lunch. They grab that and then they own it. That's the problem. And in a weird way, they are so big with that network effect. They have to pull some dirty practices to even stay in business, because they only have room to go down. They really, I mean, can you get bigger than you are right now, Facebook? Or, well, Twitter has room to grow, but not in its model. I don't think it's,
not in the US they can't. I mean, but they, Facebook and Twitter, they love emerging markets, and what they really want is access to full access into China. And and I think maybe some of their censorship in the US might be a smoke signal to China, right? Like, look, we can work around the restrictions that you guys want. We have the ability to do it, but that's the market they need. I mean, that's 1 billion more people. And they would love it. And it's 1 billion more people, a huge percentage of which are gaining increasing access to phones that can run these types of programs. And that's just dollars and dollars and dollars.
So it's all about the money at the end of the day. So
yeah, but Eric's basically saying that we're already living in It's a Wonderful Life, and we're living in Potterville, where like everything is already controlled by social media. There is no more growth, and I think that's an interesting thought.
Well, even look at it from the NCAA's point of view, right? The NCAA has private schools, has private schools, has public schools. They have it all inside there, right? But they are not state actors, right? And but in the recent case, they didn't go after them for state actors. They went after them for monopoly. You can't do this because this is a monopolistic tactic. So that's where I think the Facebook and Google and all those, that's the issue. I think that we can really, if we're going to go after them, that's where you'd go after them on. I think it's easier unless they do 230 reform, which I also think is something that I think everybody agrees 230 needs to be reformed. If you go to the leftists and we're talking about with gay rights, they're going to say we need 230 reform. If you go to the far right, they're going to say we need 230 reform. I just don't know why we can't get there, because obviously there needs to be some reforms to it. They're too powerful now.
The reason we can't get there is it's the same reason we can't get to immigration reform, right? Like, everybody agrees that immigration needs reform. There hasn't been really a major overhaul of our immigration system since something like 1957. We've gotten a couple little minor tweaks here and there, but the overall structure is the same. The country is very different than it was 65 years ago, though. And so everybody knows we need reform, but they want vastly different reforms, right? The left has a different idea of how immigration is supposed to look than the right. And even though a lot of their changes actually mesh and overlap, there are these parts on the ends where they say, nope, this is our hard limit here. And the left says that, and the right says this is our hard limit over here. And so they just, since they want to do a comprehensive immigration reform, they're not gonna allow any of the other minor changes to go through, or even places where they agree, because they want it to be a one big package deal. They want to put their party's flag on it and leave the moon there for the next 60 years while no one can agree on anything else. I think 230 is the same way. The right wants 230 to open these companies up to more liability. The left wants 230 to require these companies to have more censorship. And that we saw that in the 230 hearings very specifically. If they all agree it needs to be changed, but they're on way opposite sides of the spectrum on what they need to do.
I have a cynical view on that. My thought is that the same way as Jesse Jackson is never going to say that racism has gone down, these people will never accept any kind of actual reform, because it's a plank that they are standing on. If they take that out, they have no job. They can't complain. And I do wonder sometimes about the motivation. If you're profiting completely on pointing out nothing but the problems, and not trying to work yourself out of a job by getting a solution, is there going to be any kind of actual effective change? And
well, that led to the genesis of identitarianism, where it's basically we're going to fuel friction, and if we fuel a problem, we're setting fires because we're the only firemen in town. So, that's essentially what they're doing is they're saying, we're going to create more and more friction, and the more friction there is, the only people who are here to protect these victims who we're going to identify you as a victim and say how miserable your life is. Everyone loves feeling sympathy. So, of course, it's a very intoxicating appeal to your target market because, oh, wow, you're going to stand up for me. Great. And you're recognizing my suffering. Everyone feels that they've been suffering more than anyone else. So if you're recognizing my suffering, of course, I'm going to be supporting you. So they basically are creating this feeling of victimhood and a need for protection, which is actually self-defeating for the very people that they're ideally trying to help. The ones that they're purporting to assist, they're actually just they're disabling them and crippling them, which is, how we saw that doctor, I think his name was Dr. Ty Smith in the video, which went viral, where he was screaming about how the fact that, white people never told him that he can't get 2 medical degrees.
I saw that, yeah.
The only people who said that The only people who said that were other black people saying white people won't let you get that. And that's because that victim mentality is being shoved down the black community's throat that, like, yeah, you cannot make it. And that's what, because that fuels friction, and that means we need powerful people to help these oppressed.
Just understand, that's modern Renaissance, man. He's a friend of mine. He's got a YouTube channel. He did that. He's a good guy.
Oh, really?
But it's modern Renaissance, man. That's his YouTube channel.
Introduce me to him. I'd love to have him on.
All right, cool. Definitely. He actually mirrored one of my videos, the Breonna Taylor video, because he liked it so much. One of the things that I always find, and I'm saying this as a black man, when I was coming up through the system, that was one thing that was constant. I was always the victim. No matter what situation I was in, I would go in thinking that the system owed me something. And I know this, some people may think this is a bad taste, but this is what they told me. The system owes you because you're black. They should be doing this because you're black. And at a point, it was kind of like, okay, well, now when you go to the hospital or you go to one of these places, you feel like, hey, these people owe me. So like even at schools, the students would say, oh, you guys owe us. You guys, should do this. We are the suffering people, right? And it even gets to the point when I was in when I had passed when I passed the LSAT, and then for law school, I had passed like the first couple of tests I had passed, and someone said, well, hey, Nate is here because it's affirmative action, right? Nate's just one of the affirmative action guys. He's one of the 3 black guys who were in law school because of affirmative action, not knowing that I got like straight A's in college, not knowing that I got a grade, and
that harms you.
And yes, because it makes it seem like
Nate.
Yes, it makes it seem like I'm incompetent because I've got this leg up. And I think what Good Lawgic said is totally correct. This victimhood of being black in America and not saying, well, hey, yes, there are some in some ways I am oppressed as a black person, but there are so many ways that that's just not true. Like right now, when I worked at the law school, I was a law school lecturer, and we were trying to get minority students to come into the school. And what we would do is we'd go out and we'd try to, find minority candidates. And we kept finding that when it came to minority candidates, they just, it was almost like they wanted to just come to the law school without any, without doing anything, right? It's just like, I'm black, I showed up, let me in. And they did. They let some people in like that. And I hate getting too personal, but this literally what happened in my law school. So I'm one of like 5 or 6 black men who got into the law school out of a class of like 200 people. So we're in the law school, right? And one of the guys, they gave him a scholarship. Like he had a bad GPA. They gave him a scholarship, all this, right? Hey, these black guys, we got black people in the school, right? So we start taking the test. And obviously you guys know what happens in law school. Those final exams, if you fail them, you're out. Ooh. They failed every single exam. And then they came to us, and they had us all the black guys, they bring us all in. Hey, what do you think is going on? How come, most of you are failing the exam? And then I said, stupidly, because I'm here on the weekends, I'm here. My wife, who is pregnant, she is at home while I'm here studying. And you know what this guy's doing? That fucking guy is at the bar. That guy is always telling me every weekend, let's go out. That guy, when we go to class, he doesn't read the goddamn case. And these are the guys who are failing. So it's not because of this, right? Because you know what? I had the highest GPA of the class. It's not because of this. It was because they don't want to put in the work. But then guess what they did? They gave them another scholarship and let them restart class. And then they failed again because it was never about their skin color. It was about their work ethic. And I think we have to start making a distinction, because when you start talking about individual responsibility, people don't want to hear that. People want to say, well, this whole group was oppressed and they should all get a leg up. But no, we need to start back and say, you have to, I understand, yes, you get to a point where you do need a leg up. But at that point, when you do get it, like when I got into law school, I was saying, I'm going to do the best I possibly can and put all the work in. And a lot of these people, when they get to the law school, if I'm giving it to you for free, it's not worth anything. And that's the problem. Something that's given to you for free is just not worth anything. If you have to fight for it, then it makes it more valuable. I'm sorry, I know I'm on a big rant, but
it's fine. I was just gonna say, I agree with you, but I am also one of the guys that got in because I showed up and said, "Hey, I'm black. Just give me a scholarship." But that's sometimes it works out.
Was that on Halloween with Drexel or what?
Yeah.
but I want to make it wasn't that easy, but essentially that's what it was. You had, and it's funny because I remember I was sitting in the mid student day. There was a white guy who was actually pretty cool, and he had scored like a 170 on the LSAT, right? And he had got just as much money as me, and I scored like a 155 or something like that. So he got as much money as me, and the school said, we're giving this guy more money because he's black. But I think a lot of people, when they go into that saying, well, hey, they're going to give me a law degree just because I'm black. And that's what happens. That's where the disconnect happens. Instead of them saying, well, goddamn, I got this hookup. Let me now put it. And I'm not saying all black people do that, but a lot of them do. And that's just my experience. Half the black men in my law school failed out the first semester because they just didn't put in the work. It wasn't because they were black.
Malcolm Gladwell's written about that too. That there's some huge problems in the sense of like getting people into Harvard that really don't belong there when they should be going to a state school where they can thrive and do very well and be, in the end they'll get a degree. So there's just all kinds of problems with putting anybody into an institution that's above their actual earned level, if you will.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and Gladwell is great. And if anybody likes reading provocative nonfiction, Gladwell is excellent author who approaches things in very unique ways. And I actually really like his podcast, Revisionist History, as well. Yep. It's really good. It's really good. It's not what you think from the title, which that's just how he that's how he approaches problems. But it's he's good stuff.
His Brown versus the Board of Education episode is particularly on point with this, by the way, how by that ruling, supposedly it was helping, but it actually harmed minorities like crazy, especially the teachers.
Yeah, well, what he pointed out in Brown versus Board was that the African-American families didn't want their children necessarily going to white schools. They just didn't want their children to be automatically rejected from the white schools based on their skin color. It was more like, hey, we just want to acknowledge the right to enter these schools. They were not necessarily for forced integration. And then what forced integration did was it kept all the white teachers employed. And then a lot of the black teachers very quickly became unemployed. And suddenly you had white teachers in a still segregated world, except for schools at the time, because Brown versus Board was 55. So this is still several years before the civil rights movement would be fully realized. And so you had white teachers who lived in a pro-white segregation area teaching black students who lived in a segregated area. And they're like, there's no way these teachers are able to relate and reach these kids. And so they think Malcolm Gladwell's assertion is a lot of damage was done to these kids when they would have been better served by staying in their schools where having integration happen more naturally, I guess.
Well, as someone who went to a school, in the 80s, where my history book said Dwight D. Eisenhower was still president. Right. It's literally
Yeah.
true. I went to a school, and the president at the time in our history books was the white fucking D. Eisenhower, and that is not right. Right. But
Right.
but when I got I was intelligent enough to pass the stupid test to go to a good high school. So then I went to a good high school, and guess what? That high school was majority white and Asian, and they had the most up-to-date textbooks. They had the most up-to-date technology. It was a totally different world. And I think when you talk about segregation, I think we're talking about segregation of funds and resources, and the type of school, and the quality of school, and the quality of education, not just filling a school with black kids. And that's what I thought that movement was. So let's put black kids in these schools that have these resources versus these poor schools. But I don't think that eventually occurred, because in the 1980s, I was in fully segregated. My school was as segregated as any. All my kids in my class were happened to be black, and we had the worst book. So it's like it really had no effect. And I like how now, I don't know if you guys ever saw the studies where they said the most segregated school system in America was the New York City school system. And the reason why is because all the focus was in desegregating the South. So the South desegregated, gave black kids more of an opportunity, and the most segregated schools happened to be in New York, the place where it's supposed to be the most, the most liberal. So it's just that type of thing.
There's a lot of that. I live in Hampton, Virginia, which is where you have Hampton University, the first historically black university, very heavy black population. It's in the South. And people don't get it. Everybody goes around representing the South like it's a bunch of racists running around. But the truth is that in the South, you're going to see blacks and whites dating, hanging out, and everything else far more than you will in the North quite often, from everything I've seen and read. I mean, it's just common. Everybody, they're dating each other, they're hanging out, they're doing whatever. But it's nowhere near.
Well, think about even all the police cases that we hear about. George Floyd happened in the North, right? Eric Gardner in the North. What
Philando
about
Castile?
Yeah, and what about even in California with the what's the guy that got beats with the sticks? We should all just get along. What's the guy from back?
Rodney
in the 90s?
King.
Rodney King. That happened in California, right? So it's not like all these things are happening in the South. The biggest, anti-police and the biggest civil rights issues are now happening in the North, and I think just a lot of people just don't realize that.
Well,
the biggest culture shock of my entire life was when I up until I was 10, I grew up in the city, inside city limits in Houston, Texas, and right near some very bad neighborhoods. I was the minority. I was the minority in my elementary school classes, all of them without question, and by a significant amount. I was on the same level as the kids from India. We had 2 white kids, 2 kids from India, and then primarily black and Latino kids. And that's just how I grew up. And then suddenly I moved to Minnesota, and everybody knew the one black kid in school's name. In suburban Minneapolis, Lakeville, so about 20 miles south of Minneapolis, and it was the most weirdest culture shock ever to hear that Southerners were racist. I was like, oh really? That's interesting. I see how you guys get nervous when people of color show up in class. It was very weird, very weird.
Joe, I know you've been trying to.
I've been very, very patient. I'm very polite.
Oh, I got one more thing to say before Joe gets started.
Obviously.
I'm just kidding.
No, I had a great joke that fit in with the conversation 10 minutes ago, but it's sort of probably.
Yeah, we totally forgot about Giuliani, right?
Yeah. No, I'll tell you. People say that the left is racist, and when people on the right say it, everyone thinks that the left is just being sort of knee-jerk and it's a way of finger-pointing back. But when you're taking a role constantly of we have to take care of this and these people, we have to take care of this group, we have to take care of that group, you're looking at yourself as you're the savior of these people. And you don't it's not a respect thing. You don't look at these. That's why if you're in the South, you look at MLK's message got through. His message of judging people by the content of their character, to most people, other than a very small percentage, that messaging got through, and no one gives a damn anymore what color your skin is, what race, anything. We don't care. But, and I'm saying that like I'm a Southerner, but up in the North, when you're looking at yourself like you're a lefty and it's your job and duty to protect, you're a white man or a white woman, it's your job and duty to protect the black community, you're looking at yourself as if you're the matriarch or patriarch and the one who's supposed to, patriarch in a healthy way, not the evil patriarchy, but that you're taking care of these people who cannot take care of themselves. That inherently trains your brain to think of the people you're trying to help as inferior to you. And I don't think people really realize this. That the same way, if you dedicate your life to saying like, or your whole mission statement is like, these people can't do anything unless they can't get black people can't get an ID. What an obviously racist and confused perspective that is. And anyone in the black community will look at that and say, what are you, out of your minds? What are we like? Are we helpless? But when you're taking a role of I need to help this community, I need to help them, I need to help homosexuals. When you're taking that, you're looking at them as if they are less thans, and that you are a savior. Sure. And necessarily, you do not like them. You do not like the people that you're helping. You do not respect them. You just like feel like this is like how you're going to feel good about yourself by helping those who are less talented, capable, or supreme than you are. And that is what racism is. And they don't see their own racist ideologies that are laced into their very mindsets.
It's interesting because on one end, we're not in a race utopia, right? We still have issues. Mm-hmm. And then on the other end, and on the other end, this is not Jim Crow South, right? We're far away from those things. But on one side doesn't want to realize the progress that we've made. We've made a lot of progress over the past 40 years, 50 years. If you're black today, I would like to say, if you're black today, you're living in the best possible, I think, country to be a black person on the planet. And I think you're in one of the best societies on the planet Earth that there's ever has been for black people, right? I'm talking about the United States. Let's just cut the bullshit. You have the best opportunities. You can have the best life here in the United States. But with that said, we could go farther, right? There are certain things we could do to improve. I do think you're right. I think the left, like even with the voter ID thing, I did the video on the voter ID, and I had a friend call me immediately after they saw the video. Oh, Nate, you just don't get it. And I'm like, what don't I get? This was all political BS. It was all political. There were more Democrats that voted for voter ID laws. I proved it in that video. You see it. More Democrats voted for voter ID laws than Republicans. That's why we have a national voter ID law. They said, you don't get it. Black people can't get birth certificates. I said, well, if you can't get a birth certificate, how do you prove that you're a citizen? And they sat there. Oh, well, we don't know, so we should just take your word for it? Like, there has to be some way to identify whether you're a citizen or not to vote. And if you're saying people can't get birth certificates, can't get anything, then what you're saying is that they're so inept that we got to take care of them. That's ridiculous.
How could you not get a birth certificate? That doesn't make sense. This is not 1910.
Look, I can answer this because if you don't live close enough to the county of your birth, and you don't have a fax machine, you can't interact with the government. That's why, because the government is stuck on fax machines.
Listen, I got my birth certificate from a state that is not New York, over the internet. Boom, 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 boom. Here. They say, well, what about they can't pay the $25 fee? I'm like, so you're really telling me? And then even when you look at the data, right? So then you look at the data, you say, okay, listen, you're saying black people can't pay $25 for a fee, which is pretty, ridiculous in of itself. But okay, let's put the $25 in. Now, after this voter ID law, where people now have to show IDs, right? You had the historic black turnout, right? At the first time in the history of this country, you had a higher percentage of blacks turn out for the election of 2012 than you did whites. For the first time after the voter ID law was put into place. So that shows me that they can get IDs, right? Not only could they get it, they got it in mass, right? In Georgia, right? Georgia has voter ID laws for years. Then guess what? When it came down to we want people to come out, they came out in mass, and now you got Georgia's totally blue, right? Because all these black people who couldn't get IDs, all of a sudden got IDs and voted. So it's again, this is all about political.
Abrams saved them, Nate. Stacey herself, she saved them.
She brought IDs to everybody.
I know, it was like, Moses brought the tablets or whatever, and she brought ID.
She comes down. She comes down from the mountain throwing IDs.
Yeah, IDs. Don't verify anybody.
Oprah with IDs.
And the weirdest part of this whole thing is that the scholars, right? The scholars who've looked into this said that, to be honest with you, voter ID laws now may even have the opposite effect, because people who think they're targeted by these voter ID laws tend to come out in mass to overwhelm them. So like that happened in Georgia. They had the voter ID laws. People got upset. So guess what? The Stacey Abrams, they en masse got everybody IDs and voted these new people in. It seems like that has the opposite effect. So when the Republicans say we want voter ID laws because it helps Republicans, and when Democrats say voter ID laws, that's all bullshit, because the data itself says it's BS. But you can't convince anybody, because data is bad. It's a bad thing when you're talking about politics.
Hey, got a super chat. I got to get the grift in. I got Nick here and trying to learn from the expert, but
you need to do better.
Marty Lund. Boston was weird. Judges went nuts on integration via forced busing, screwed with all the poor people, black and white, trashed already desegregated schools too. Yeah, kids use this football, parents trampled. I agree. Horrible.
Boston is one of the most racist places. If you ever look at Fenway Park during like a playoff game, it is like a sea. It's a sea of red with white faces. It literally looks like the Republican National Convention.
I've heard that it's more racist in Boston than it is just about anywhere in the country.
I don't know, but even if you look at their sports teams, they only have white players. I used to mock some of my friends who were Boston fans, and I'm like, why? How is it that you only have white players in white wide receiver? The only white wide receivers in the world are in New England, and it's like every player they would have like Big Papi and like basically all white players in their teams in the late 90s or early aughts.
God, I wish Popeyes gave out birth certificates. I need to go because I gotta get one. I gotta get one of those stupid enhanced IDs. I would much rather go to Popeyes to get my birth certificate so I could get my enhanced ID than going to the government office twice. I mean, that's all I'm saying. By the way, Eric, I am criticizing your super chat follower. You missed a $2 one. My radar went off, and you have not gotten it. It's making me very.
No.
I'm having.
Dragon's Treasure. And guys, while you're at it, go to thedragonstreasure.com and use the code unstructured when you buy tea. And it's good tea. It's like fiddly tea.
Nice.
Like the really nice custom stuff. And he sells like a pot in there, though, that somebody dumb like me can make the tea without having to go through the mechanics of boiling the water, but then letting it simmer down to a proper temperature of 190 degrees.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. What is this nonsense?
Yeah. Is it hot yet? Okay. It looks like it's darker. Okay.
Pour hot water. Just scald all of the tea leaves. It doesn't matter. Then you say it tastes bad and you blame him. That's what I do.
Well, yeah, but everybody get your discount first.
Right. Yes. No, it is actually very good tea. He puts out a very good product.
All right, and to catch up too, great conversation. Keep up the great work. Thank you. I wish I didn't have a day job and I would do as many noon live streams as I could. Unfortunately, I have to go by time off. And from Barnes, in honor of the king of rackets himself, the Nick. That's it. You're not Nick. You're the Nick.
The Nick. Yes, thank you. I'm going to start referring to myself in third person.
The Nick.
Listen.
And yes, unstructured.locals.com. And while we're at it, NateTheLawyer.locals.com. Finally, Rekieta Law.locals.com. And Good Lawgic.
Thank you. The only demonetized guy here, and I can't. It's like I get last billing.
Well, of course, dude,
I get Robert Barnes. Robert Barnes watching this stream, and he's like, "Oh, everyone's got to sign up to Nicky the Nose and Unstructured." I'm like, dude, seriously, seriously.
Hey, I was headed that way too, bad. I just literally have to change all my content. It sucks, but it's like if you want to stay monetized on YouTube.
Do I have to take down all my streams? Do I take down all my streams because I don't know what the hell they're going to say that this is bad, this is evil? I don't even know how to do. I need a lawyer to help me reapply in July.
I would just use it and literally just say, whatever. Every time you get dinged I mean, I'm obviously making hay. Look, we're yellow. I'm probably going to get a T-shirt saying we're yellow.
Speaking of which, we were talking about Giuliani at that time.
We were.
And
That's
I think
true.
so. Yeah. And I do want to say
Pro,
this.
keeping us on track.
Yeah, you're welcome. Someone's got to do it. You're all over the place here talking. I don't know.
It is called unstructured, right?
I never got the name before.
So
Yeah,
so you were saying about Giuliani. Go ahead, because I want to get that.
So there was a 33-page decision that was issued on a special motion that was to suspend his license while the investigation into what disciplinary action should be taken, if any, against him. So this is a very unusual thing. Normally, when a grievance is filed, and a grievance can be brought by an individual or sui sponte by the court. So the grievance is leveled at the respondent, who in this case is Giuliani, and they say these are the problems we have with what you did. These are the issues we have with what you've said or done, and then the respondent puts in a response. And apparently, based on his response and his continued action, they said we don't want to wait till we have a formal hearing about this disciplinary, action, but we want to have him suspended right now, so that while there's being pending a determination, that he cannot practice law. And this is a very unusual thing for the court to grant, because they're basically saying the yardstick that they need to reach in order to come to that is say that he's an imminent threat to the public if we allow him to continue practicing law. And the decision that they gave is, yes, he is an imminent threat to the public. And when I first heard about this, I was like, okay, this is like just cancel culture on speed, because our court system is all Democrats. It's an elected position. You cannot win unless you basically make friends with the right Democrats, get your name on the ticket, and then you automatically win. So I was looking at it like this has to be something that's, purely political, especially since, look, we know how much Giuliani is hated by the left. So it all fit in. And I spent a live stream last night going through it line by line, this 33-page decision, and I started with the position of like, this is just, he's being railroaded and this is cancel culture. And by the time I was done, I got to tell you, they zeroed in on certain allegations he made, certain bungling moves he made, like when he was in court and claiming that, this is fraud, while their amended complaint had specifically withdrawn a claim of fraud. I mean, it's just sloppy lawyering that was just amplifying the divisiveness over the election, and they came, they zeroed on certain claims he made, like 165,000 underage people voting in Georgia, which, if you think about that for a second, it just sounds insane. And not just that he said it, but this is what he did that made me outraged. And I channeled my Nick Rekieta when I was doing this last night, because after the charges were levied against him, after he received notice that he's, this whole grievance committee is examining his conduct, he would still go on his podcast and multiple times repeat the very claims that they said were lies that he knew were lies, and establishing that and they also had to establish that he knew that they were untrue at the time he said it, and he kept doing it. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, many attorneys who are facing this, they'll hire an attorney to protect them and give them guidance as to how to walk through this entire thing. Up. Yeah, and any attorney would just say, shut your fat trap. Stop yammering. What is wrong with you? And I was reading, and they're saying, and after, he continued making these statements on March 22nd on this podcast, March 24th on this program, after these the charges have been levied against him, and I'm just sitting there, I'm like, you know what? This guy cut his own head off. He really did. He's begging for them to suspend him and basically treat him like he is an imminent threat.
So he's sharp on the pitch.
My favorite part of that story is I was going to interrupt you and say what they should have done is considered him a threat to the public based on his oral argument in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Oh, that was horrible.
That was a joke, and then it turns out that's kind of what they did.
Yeah.
Because they're like, no matter what you think about Giuliani out in the chat, guys, that showing in Pennsylvania was one of the most embarrassing displays of incompetence, and it showed firsthand.
Showing?
What was that?
that the shoe polish showing?
Oh, you're talking about with the dripping down his side?
No,
Yeah.
no, that was at the shoe polish show. The dripping, the hair dye. That was at a public speech that he did with Sidney Powell, I believe. But no, his Pennsylvania argument was so embarrassingly bad, and it showed really quickly probably the biggest problem Donald Trump had in the post-election was that they had no legal strategy or infrastructure in place. They were not prepared to do these cases. They were not prepared. They were not prepared for the fight they would have to put up. And Rudy coming in, being called in to do this oral argument on 1 day's notice with no prep and clearly not having read the full complaint at least a couple times. He botched it, man. He did a bad job. And if you hired him and he came to court and put that argument forward, you would fire him and maybe even consider suing him. Yeah.
That it was so bad. And I got to tell you, first of all, I used to really respect Giuliani. He was a great DA. He put away John Gotti. Then he came in as a mayor, and he arguably was the greatest mayor, and certainly in my lifetime, and perhaps in the last century. He turned New York City around after Dinkins destroyed this city.
Totally.
He turned the city around and made it amazing. And somewhere over the last 10 years, he basically became Frank from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's like just weird things going on. His brain is gone or something, and he's weird things are happening. The dripping down the side of his face, that would only happen to Giuliani or Frank from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's just like sort of a weird kind of guy, and I think something happened to his brain where he still has, he has a foundation from his youth where he has some sort of insight and intellect and understanding of the law. But I mean, I loved and respected him, wanted to vote for him for president, and now it's like every time he gets up, I was like, that was incompetence. What Nick was just saying that's inexcusable, and part of that's on Trump. That Trump should have set up legal teams in every battleground state. In Florida, even in Florida, Ohio, where there was no issue. In Georgia, in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, he should have had, in July, legal teams that were ready to jump in there for him in November if he had an issue. Because he kept saying, I don't know what the Democrats are going to do. I don't know what the Democrats are going to do. Well, if you don't know what they're going to do, then have legal teams ready in every one of these places to just go.
Now you're making me defend Trump, but to be honest with you, I don't blame Trump. I'll blame his attorney. I think he trusted Giuliani because Giuliani said, I know what to do. I can make these arguments. I can do this. I can do this. That's why you pay the guy to be your attorney, right? You pay him and you pay Sidney Powell. You say, hey, guys, this is what we're going to do. And I think their strategy just sucked. Like you said, I would have voted if Giuliani could have, if he was term limited out. If he could have ran again, I would have voted for Giuliani again, right? I think Giuliani was probably the best mayor the city has probably seen, like you're saying, in a generation, right? The people who, even Bloomberg, after when Bloomberg came in, he couldn't hold a candle to Giuliani. But I don't know what happened at the end. Maybe it was he just wanted the cash or something like that. But at the end of the day, some people were saying about the Michael Avenatti, he still hasn't been suspended. But Michael Avenatti's from California. He's not from New York. So you're talking about two different jurisdictions. I think, unfortunately, what happened with Rudy Giuliani is the defamation suit with Dominion, all these particular lies. And the rule is simple here in New York. You can only tell the truth. When you're representing a client, you can tell the truth, or say nothing. So if somebody asks you a question, did your client do it? As a lawyer, you're not supposed to say no. If you know it's a lie, you're just supposed to say nothing. And that's the way they walk the fine line in ethics here. And I think he just said, well, just like I can say whatever I want in representing my client. And that's what got him in trouble. That's why all those things were listed, because it was saying you can't say things that are factually false and know them to be false in defense of your client. It's a clear violation of the rule.
Yeah, on the subject of Trump and legal teams, I talked to a Michigan lawyer. There was, I don't know if you guys remember this. I interviewed one of the guys involved with this, but in Detroit, right before the election, they actually had training for the election watchers and the vote counters. And at this training, they were specifically instructing the vote counters on how to set up the room logistically so that they could use the COVID restrictions to prevent the watchers from watching their vote counting. Like that, they have to be 6 feet away, and they have to be behind you to go ahead and see your computer screen. So what you do is you put your table within 6 feet of a wall. And they're instructing it specifically how to do it. And then they would instruct them that said, if they become belligerent and demand to get close to you, you can use the COVID restrictions. You can have an election official come over and remove them from the building, because they're not allowed to interact with you in that way. They're not allowed to interfere with the process. And so they did this training. So this guy I know, he went to Detroit. He recorded all this, came on my show. We played the recording. It was called the Detroit Leaks. YouTube actually took down the original Detroit Leaks video. I think the only place you can watch it is in our live stream. And then they, a legal team in Michigan actually sued to get this resolved. And right at the morning of the hearing, the judge sort of indicated how it was going to go. They were going to win. They were going to win big. And they basically negotiated the terms of the victory with the Detroit City election workers, and they got them to agree not to do any of the stuff that they ultimately ended up doing anyway. But they got them to agree to not do it. And so I talked to that lawyer. I had about an hour and a half phone conversation with him while I was driving to the cities one day. And he was telling me that they were the only law firm in Michigan that was actually attacking any of this stuff. And the Republicans came up and asked him to do a case within like 4 days. And they had not had anybody else in the state of Michigan ready to take on these cases. And they came up and they're like, can you do this? And he's like, no, not in 4 days. There's no way. No way I put this together. Don't you guys have somebody? And they're like, no, we don't have anybody. It was just, and Michigan is a known battleground state. They knew.
Yeah.
There. And it was just bad planning.
Yeah, it's funny. I got some grief the other day for saying something like this. I said, don't follow me because I'm a black lawyer. Follow me because you think I'm a good lawyer. And people were like, oh, no, you should use them. I'm like, no, if you like my ideas, follow me. If you don't, then don't follow me. But if it's because I'm black, then that's a bad reason to follow me.
When I was going to law school, I actually relied on ethnicity also. And I said, I want to become the first Jewish lawyer. And that's how I got in. That was my niche.
Finally. Finally, we got one.
Hey, I'm the non-lawyer here in the mix.
You know what? I did want to ask you guys something that just came into my mind. In Newark, they bought this 700-pound statue for George Floyd.
Yeah.
And that pissed me off to no end. And I'm going to tell you why. What happened with George Floyd was a travesty. He was murdered by the police. That guy's getting probably 30 years at 2:30 when he gets sentenced. Whatever, right?
You can watch the live stream with Nick Rekieta at 1:30 Central today.
Oh, you're going to do it at 1:30? You're going to do it tonight? Damn, Nick should have told me. I'd definitely join that.
He doesn't want us. He didn't invite us.
I'm doing it right after the show because it goes. The sentencing hearing starts at 1:30 p.m. So I'm jumping straight over.
Oh, please, yeah. I'll definitely be interested in that. But I want to say one thing. George Floyd it was a situation, right? And yes, the whole situation moved the conversation forward, moved us to where we're going now. But to deify this man, like he's a MLK, I don't think it demeans the mission, but George Floyd is no Martin Luther King. He's no Maya Angelou. You know what I'm saying? He's someone who would sit in a situation, yes, who was horrible, and that helped us move forward. But to make this person seem like he's some type of thought leader or something like that, and I know people are going to hate me for saying this, George Floyd was a drug addict. He had many, many problems and was in a situation that he helped facilitate. Now, what the cop did was wrong. The cop murdered him. What he did was wrong. But that is in no way indicative of that police department, number one, because again, one person doing something wrong doesn't, all those police departments. But number two, doesn't deify the man to say what he wasn't. I do understand you want to acknowledge the fact that this happened, but to spend to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a statute for someone to just be there is ridiculous in the sense of you could have used that statute to send some kids to college to do some real good, and just now to put essentially someone who was a drug addict who just was in a bad situation.
I want to ask you, Nate,
especially in Newark, because Newark is a city who is so horribly defunded. The schools are trashed, and to spend $100,000 on the statue of George Floyd, who's not even in that state, it just doesn't make sense to me. Go ahead.
Nate, what makes George Floyd any different from Tony Timpa?
Oh, I don't know.
Tony Timpa's a white guy who was snuffed out by the cops.
Happened, right?
The exact same thing a year before George Floyd. What makes him any different?
I think it's the skin color and the state.
Right, and yet,
right?
There's zero evidence that the skin color played a role in George Floyd's death. Zero evidence was ever proffered or offered, and there's no reason to even think that the fact that he was black had anything to do with the fact that he's dead.
Having the fact that he's black had nothing to do with the case. They didn't bring up any of that evidence. That's just a misnomer. Just to be clear, so everyone knows, the fact that George Floyd was black and the cop was white had zero thing to do with his conviction on the case. That's what it is. Right.
And that's why it's that much more astonishing that he's considered a civil rights leader for the black community when he never once expressed such a thing. He's not a shining example of the black community. Far from it. He's until he was killed the way he was killed, he was an embarrassment for the black community. And he wasn't killed for being black.
His accomplishment in life was death.
His accomplishment in life was death, and it wasn't even a racial death.
Let me quote Biggie Smalls. Biggie Smalls said, "You're nobody till somebody kills you," and that's George Floyd right there. He was nobody until Chauvin killed him.
Well, that's what's interesting about this. It's reminding me, going back to Malcolm Gladwell. He did a great.
There we go with Gladwell again. Go on.
He did a great show on the statue in Birmingham.
Yep, the dog.
The statue in Birmingham of the cop with the dog and the kid during the civil rights thing. And the amazing thing about that is that statue does not represent anything close to the truth of what happened in Birmingham.
It's the exact opposite.
Right. It's the opposite. The cop who had the dog that's from the photo that was used as a reference point for the statue, he was actually pulling the dog back away from the kid. He was not sicking the dog onto him. The guy who was there wasn't even part of the civil rights protest. He was skipping school. He heard Martin Luther King was going to speak, and he just decided to take a shortcut, basically turned around, bumped into these cops, and the dog was startled. So the dog went after him, cops pulling him back, and that cop's entire life was ruined. But the interesting thing about the statue is that and the statue artist acknowledges that it's complete fiction, what was going on. But wow. He says that it's not representative of that event, but it's representative of what was going on and what the overall sentiment was at the time. So the interesting thing about the Floyd statue is that we'll get this revision of history. It'll happen. Floyd will be deified as a saint for the sole reason that he was a black guy killed by the cops, not because of his particular situation, but because of what the overall perspective is on the greater situation in the United States. Agree with it or not, I'm not saying that it's 100% accurate, but that is the sentiment that is in popular zeitgeist right now. And so that is what the statues of Floyd that are going up. There's one in Minneapolis now. It's like an oversized park bench with this huge statue of Floyd, sitting down, and you can sit next to him and stuff. And it's this guy wasn't sitting. He's not some city icon sitting on a park bench. He was maybe they should have put it in they should have had a statue of an SUV with him in there, holding counterfeit 20s and trying to hide drugs. That would have maybe been more accurate, but it doesn't capture the sentiment of of what's going on in popular culture. And that's what the that's again, this is why like listening to Gladwell is great. He interviewed the guy who was the subject of the statue. And that guy's like, I wanted nothing to do with this. I didn't want any publicity from this because then my parents would know I was skipping school. I was gonna get my ass kicked.
The cop saved his life. That dog would have tore him up.
Oh, yeah. What about the black girl who is, well, first of all, even just to go back to statutes, like I have a problem with Confederate statutes too. They're traitors to the country. They took up arms and wanted to destroy the Union. Obviously, having statutes for that's I think that's crazy. But if people want to do what they want to do with their own money, that's fine. But my public fund shouldn't go to have statutes of traitors to the country. That's just my feeling on Confederate statutes. But now I think it's never about the truth, but the political message and how to weaponize the politics of it all. George Floyd wasn't, Chauvin wasn't charged with racism, right? With killing someone because of their race. But the politics demanded that, hey, that's what the perception was. And now if you go 100 years from now, you say, what happened to this man? He was choked, he was kneeled on and choked to death because of a black man. And then someone says, Tony Tipper will not be a name only remembered on this stream, right? You go 10 years from now, he will never be forgotten again, even though something very similar happened. And that's what it is. And I think that's what the Democrats are great at doing. They're great at taking these issues that have a tendency to have the perception of have this a race imbalance and then make them the core issue. We're going to now fight. We're fighting for you so you don't become a George Floyd. But the majority is that you're very unlikely that someone who's not on drugs, who's not trying to pass counterfeit bills, and who is not in that situation, who's not trying to fight with the police to get in the car, is going to be in that George Floyd situation. You know what I mean?
There was a certain perfect storm here for the left in the sense that he's in cuffs and, restrained, and you have video of the cop's face where the cop looks as dispassionate and uninvolved and like defiant of I'm doing whatever I'm going to do for 8 minutes. And the expression on his face of snuff that while he happens to be snuffing out a black man who's cuffed, that is that was the Lollapalooza.
It's like the Covington kids. It was it went for a long time.
Yeah,
and there wasn't any competing footage. But yeah, they took this Nick Sandman or whatever his expression. You're right, and it was like, oh, look at him, just mocking this elder, and he wasn't. If you paid it to look at it at all, it's not that. And if you really look at Chauvin, he's not disinterested. He's panicked. He does not look calm. He looks like,
no one
what
looks
are
at
these
that picture
people
that
going to
way.
do?
Let's just be honest. Well, as a former professional,
he's a good guy.
No, I'm not saying he's a good guy either. I'm saying as a professional, though, when the one thing that they always train you to do is when you have a suspect in handcuffs, that suspect is almost your property. You have to make sure care, control, and so forth and so forth. And the whole
whoa, hold on. We can't have George Floyd being Derek Chauvin's property.
That's true. Right? Oh my God!
Obviously, Nate's trying to make a whole slavery thing out of this.
Yes. But with that, that's true. If I say his property, but what they tell you is that whenever you put the handcuffs on somebody, you have to treat that person as you're in charge of that person's health, their well-being. If something happens to that person, then that's your fault, right? It's my fault because that person has handcuffs on. So when the situation happened with Chauvin as a 19-year veteran of officer would have known that's the rule, right? That's the rule. We have to make sure this guy is not hurt, this guy is not this. And for those of you know, when I was trained, they did say you got to treat them as if they're your property because you're going to be in trouble. Unfortunately, I was black and they were training us blaming other black law enforcement officers, so it worked. But in this particular case, I think the problem is that if you're a professional in the field, you know that what he did was he did it too long, and someone got hurt. The family should get paid, and yes, if he is. But I think the problem comes in is the only reason why I think he was charged with murder, in the sense of what he was the public outrage. The public was outraged on what happened. That was definitely an assault. And that was definitely, I think, a manslaughter. I think you had manslaughter in spades, but I think you get I think you get assault. I think you get the second-degree murder because of the outrage. And then what prosecutors do, they say, well, do you think I can prove this charge? And in Minnesota, I'm sorry, Nick, you guys have this crazy assault, felony murder rule that makes absolutely no sense anywhere else on the planet. But guess what? In Minnesota, he does his crime. Assault can be the underlying charge, and guess what? You got second-degree murder. But the interesting part is there's another case where this is happening to another cop. You remember the cop with the Wendy shooting in Georgia?
Yeah, Richard Brooks, right?
That cop is also being charged with an assault felony murder, just like in Minnesota. So these two cases happen to have in the two crazy states. Sorry, Nick, your state's law is insane.
But hate
that's
it.
where they charged it, and you got another second-degree murder case.
Well, the victim is much less sympathetic. He's shooting a taser at the cop when he's like, Well,
yeah, I mean, it's self-defense.
Yeah, I'm actually, that one surprises me because I'm like, I watched that video and I'm like, I wish they hadn't shot the guy just because I don't want anybody shot by cops in general. But at the same time, he steals a cop's taser, turns around and fires it at him. I actually don't know what you expect is going to happen. Like to me, again, regardless of skin color, you grab a cop's taser and fire it at the cop, I think you're going to get shot. I mean, I don't know what else their plan would be at that point. So,
And I once watched a video from this guy who was using a level of police force thing, and they said that I don't remember who it was. I saw it like 4 months ago, but I think the video was taken down by YouTube. And they were saying that the level of force of a taser in the hands of an untrained civilian is considered a deadly weapon.
That's me. That's my video. It's still up there.
Don't you like being quoted back to yourself? Isn't that a great feeling?
I'm like, he's exactly using the same exact sentence I used.
Yeah, I know.
Well, also, I've had Dr. Wood on, and he's talked about it too. There's an escalation in force. Yeah, and he doesn't even like tasers. As he put it, he's like, his mindset is that the taser's shouldn't even be in the equation. Either you're enough to be deadly or not.
Well, the general way it works. I trained at our law enforcement academy for I think 6 months in the summer, and then I was a part-time trainer. And what they used to tell us to train other officers is, number one, we don't fight fair. So if you got one officer, this is not like the Old West where it's just one-on-one. No, that doesn't happen. What you do is you want 2 officers or 3 officers for one perp.
Sure.
The second thing is that because you're acting under color of law, under state law, you are supposed to be one level above wherever the suspect is. So if the suspect is trying to fight you with fists, you pull out a taser. If the suspect pulls out a knife, you pull out a gun. We're not having knife fights in the streets with suspects. We're supposed to gain control. That's why they allow you to be one level up. And a taser. And the weird thing about the Brooks cases in Atlanta, when the cops had pointed a taser at 2 protesters, and that same DA charged the cops with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and said at the press conference, a taser under Georgia law is a deadly weapon. Well, then when that same taser was pointed at a cop and shot, and a cop responded with deadly physical force, as the training said, because I actually went to their training and saw deadly force can be used. That same DA said, well, the taser is not a deadly weapon. And that's what people are saying. It's like, you can't have two different, you can't have 2 different standards. Either it is or it isn't. And there've been cases where cops have gotten a death penalty, right? In Georgia, where they tased the guy to death. They literally tased the guy to death, and the cop got the deputy's gone death penalty. So tasers are deadly weapons in Georgia, and for the DA to charge that cop, I think is a travesty of justice. I hope people don't think now I'm all pro police, but I think that was a travesty of justice. You can't. There's no way you can square that circle.
No, I'm about as anti-police as they come. I watched that shooting and I was like, that's a good shoot. Well, I don't know what you want him to do. Get tased? Like, just, well, you know what, officer? You're just gonna have to take the taser. Sorry, just deal with it. You've got a guy who openly, like, physically resisted arrest, attempted to flee, and then in that flee, in the struggle, he grabs a taser and tries to tase the cops who's pursuing him. Again, that's shoot worthy. And I hate people being shot by cops. I hate it. I think that it's a short circuit to due process, and it bothers me. But, at the end of the day, I'm not going to say a cop. Well, sorry, buddy. You just have to take the taser. You just have to do that.
Well, it's like Columbus, which is the perfect thing. The Columbus, Ohio shooting, you could see it two ways. You could say that a cop shot a black girl or a cop saved a black girl.
Right.
Same shooting.
Say her name. Come on, Eric. Say her name.
I don't even remember.
Yeah. I don't even remember the name.
Makia Bryant.
Makia.
That's right.
Yeah, but
That's
but I'm wondering, how is that cop not a hero? How is that cop not a hero?
Shooting.
Exactly.
Yeah, what?
It's the theme.
You think he's gonna be charged? You think he's gonna be charged?
Hell no.
No.
Who the hell's going to convict
Obviously,
him?
he shouldn't be.
He shot somebody trying to stab somebody at point blank.
Rashard Brooks
You don't
killer,
charge who wants to
cop
charge
shouldn't be. Rashard Brooks.
Yeah, that would be that might maybe he should be charged because that prosecution might finally set it too far. Like that, because Chauvin has become a figurehead, and it's like this is not the hill, guys. For me, sure. Chauvin is not the hill to die on justified police use of force. Right. He's on the guy. I think there are questions about whether or not he's gotten a fair trial. Should it have moved out of the cities? The appeals court's going to have to deal with all of that. But Chauvin is not the hill to die on. But that guy getting charged, that would be one where we go, okay, now we see this is going too far. There's basically no question from any of the available evidence that what he did was 100% correct.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's a hero. He was literally, that was like Batman out there. He just popped out there, fired, a perfect shot there.
The skill too.
That's what I'm saying. He was Batman.
It was astounding. And there's no, every statement they make is just so ridiculous on his face. They're like, shoot him in the leg, or shoot her in the leg, or
what are you guys
or pull
talking
out
about?
your taser. It's like, do you realize the time for the taser darts to even travel? It was in air. The knife was about to strike. That was like a movie worthy shot. It was that close.
Yeah.
That guy should get a medal. Let's just be honest. He should get a medal. He saved that girl's life. Come on. But again, that's what the left, they go crazy. So
what else we need though is the guy who was there, the dad or whatever, who was saying you shot my baby. That guy needs to be drafted into the NFL as a place kicker. Because I don't know if you guys noticed, but he had that field goal form trying to kick that girl in the face. It's like, what? That's when I'm watching the video. That's all I'm looking at. I'm like, this guy is throwing a serious head kick, and we're all just ignoring it because someone's getting shot over here. Like that's interesting. This kick, he had follow through. His foot's like up in the air,
committing a full assault in plain view of the cops. And
All right, here's a question that people are pushing back a little. So if Antifa threw Molotov cocktails, bricks, etc., are the cops justifying lethal response? Maybe.
Molotov cocktails, yes. If you see somebody trying to throw a Molotov cocktail at you, yes, you can show a lethal response. Bricks, maybe not so much. It all depends. And again, it's not. People think it's as simple as X versus Y, but it's not that simple. Every situation.
Let me look at the handbook real quick.
Different. Yeah, it's like, coming out and you see somebody about to stab somebody, you don't say, okay, should I pull out a taser? You got to stop that threat. So but I think a lot of times people just don't want. They want it to be simple, but not understanding it's complicated. And I think when The View covered this story, they did a horrible job. They did a horrible job at trying to parse the thing with the cops could have shot her in the leg, the cop not understanding that they don't train you to shoot. It's so hard to shoot people in the leg, and you got the ricochet effect. You have so many different things that can go wrong trying to shoot the knife out of her hand. What? Do you really think that cop is that good to try?
That would have shot the damn victim or the almost victim.
The knife is
John Wayne do it.
It's like, come on, really?
It's weird because I would have thought that The View would have nailed this one and got it right. So I'm surprised that on this one they haven't.
Comic relief by Joe.
I saw John Wayne shoot a gun out of someone's hand. Surely you could shoot a knife out of someone's hand. Come on.
Yeah. These people think the movie life is exactly what's going on in real life, but it's just not. It's not.
Mythbusters did a thing about shooting guns out of people's hands. It doesn't actually do it.
What do you mean it doesn't do it?
Well, Mythbusters also did the whole knife is more dangerous than a gun in a fight. And that's been proven. Within a certain distance, like 20
Yeah,
feet,
it's a ranged weapon.
a knife is more
Yeah.
dangerous than a gun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They're knives are horrifying, and if you ever want to be horrified, just look up a slideshow image of knife wounds, especially. And if you want to really know why why cops are very suspicious as they get closer and closer to people, just look at knife wounds. It's a terrible killer of police officers.
And they actually some even go through bulletproof vests too. So it's really tough.
Yeah, and yeah, if they like puncture your colon or whatever, it's like a very slow, horrible way to die. So yeah, knives are nasty. But no, the bullet on Mythbusters, they had a basically a robot hand holding a gun and we're shooting the gun, and the bullets just they're hitting a hard metal. The bullets fragment but the gun doesn't actually receive that much force from the bullet. And so the thing about bullets is they don't transfer a ton of energy overall. They just transfer enough energy in a very small space to penetrate skin and soft tissue. So it'll just rip through. But I mean, you see if there's like even slight angles and bullets hit bones, they deflect pretty quickly and pretty simply because it's a small mass object. It's just moving very fast. So shooting a gun out of a hand doesn't usually work because there's not a lot of energy transfer into the gun. So unless you're shooting their hand, which I guess kind of works, but it's a mess. But in the Old West movies, they're always shooting the gun, and not hitting the hand, not hitting the person.
And I think all police are trained to that level of marksmanship. People don't know, like if something is moving and trying to shoot it, that's like extremely hard. That's a professional marksman gets shot to do, right? Yeah. Shooting something on the move. I don't know if you guys ever shot before, but that's like it's not easy. It is not easy at all.
Nope.
I personally think that everyone should go through, like every high school kid, they should have a class and take kids to a range. I think people should be exposed to weapons professionally and see what they're about, so they actually feel them, hold them, experience what it's like to shoot, see how hard it is to hit a target in a manner. I've always believed that.
Yeah, see how hard it is to hit a full body silhouette. Like, show people that if you have not shot a gun before, your first time ever, you grab a gun, you point it at the target, you're 20 feet away, you pull that trigger and see if you even get a shoulder shot. Right? Like that is not a simple thing. And that's when you're calm and rested. You haven't been running. You don't have adrenaline surging through your body. You haven't been attacked. You haven't been hit or disoriented. It's not an easy thing. It takes a little time, and yeah, your muscles start to compensate for it, and you start to learn. But if you've never done it, man, it's
guns usually on the floor because somebody had dropped it, and then it's like, it gets crazy. First off, shoots, boom! Oh, they dropped the gun. Why are you dropping the gun? Oh my god!
Oh, I love the videos they used to do of like taking these dudes and giving them high-powered rifles. They've never shot anything in their life, and the rifle like get launched out of their arms and stuff.
Like I didn't know I was supposed to hold it. Like or because you can break your shoulder with that. Like some people. It's crazy. Yeah, but I think you're right, Eric. I think people should at least understand it. But that again, the lefties will hate you for that. They're like, no, we're not taking any of it. So yeah,
what you need is a good, solid, conservative friend. Every liberal needs a conservative friend who says, hey man, look, I know you don't like guns. Let's just go to the range sometime. You can fire one out. You can test it. You can see this thing you don't like and judge it for yourself, and then go have a good time. Drink a couple beers after the range, not before. And then see, I think, for some people firing a gun terrifies them for life. I know some people who, they have fired guns and that's why they don't like them. But then for other people, it really changes their mind.
Around.
Yeah.
Usually it is the other way around, that when people fire the gun, they at least understand it. And some of the ridiculous thoughts, go away, like the whole shooting sideways. And, a lot of that stuff, just go try
kill
it.
Shot.
Yeah. not going to fly. And I don't know. I just believe in exposure. Sadly, yeah, it probably won't
That's what
happen.
she
I've
said.
seen in the chat that they used to have that.
You believe in exposure, huh?
Well, yeah.
So we're
Okay.
talking about Jeffrey Toobin coming back, right? That's what
Yeah.
Hey. You know, if
He wasn't
really
canceled.
mean your name is a verb.
Oh, let me get up. Let me get up. Yo, but you know what though? I'm going to say that must have been one hell of a Zoom call, right? Where you got to just stand up and jerk it right in front of everybody. It's just like maybe when the colleagues were like, Jeffrey, I would suck your cock if you weren't on this phone call. He's like, all right, meeting over. Oh no, they were on he said they were on like a 5-minute break, and then he stands up and starts like, "What the hell? You thought you could get
it was a 5-minute break.
It was like a 5-minute.
It was 10. It was 10 minutes.
It was a
Be fair to
10-minute
the-
break.
No, so
Wow.
someone informed me. I feel like it was Emily Baker. I believe that's who told me. But the apparently he was on a FaceTime call. So he had a 10-minute break and was apparently on a FaceTime call with someone who was not his wife during the 10-minute break. And so he thought that's why he thought his camera was off, because he thought he had switched over to the other app, apparently.
Oh.
And so because I was sitting there, I watched his comeback interview,
Yeah,
and
so
he's
that's
like,
it.
I'm apologizing to my wife and my family and all this stuff. And I'm like, what? Like, I mean, you did something dumb. You made a mistake. There's nothing malicious here. Like, you shouldn't have done that. And you should have been smarter, but you didn't really do anything bad. And then I was informed at that point that there was some other stuff going on. And that's what the real apology was about.
What was funny to me about that interview, I didn't hear anyone really talk about it, is he said it gave him a chance with the time off to work on his book on the Oklahoma City bombing. And I was like, oh, yeah, he's finally going to peel that sucker off. I'm just sitting around trying to figure out what happened at the whole Oklahoma City bombing. And in timely fashion, Jeffrey Toobin's going to come out with a book.
Thank goodness.
And let us know what happened there.
The thing was that he came back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going, wait, what? What?
Yeah.
I mean,
he was over.
Can we bring back Kurt Schilling then? Obviously, he's time to let him come back.
And he should definitely be in the Hall of Fame. Kurt Schilling should be in the Hall of Fame. It's ridiculous that
No, bloody sock. It was ketchup. Everyone knows it was ketchup. It was ketchup. It was ketchup. It was ketchup.
Listen,
Okay, I don't want to
Kurt
hear.
Schilling is a Hall of Fame talent.
Conspiracies, Joe. Everyone wants to know, and it's a good way to close out. What do you guys think about the McAfee suicide?
There we go.
You just closed that one out. A nice non-controversial topic to close out the stream.
Just wrap that up. Wrap that puppy up in 60 seconds or less.
Perfect for monetization. This is great. McAfee is a very interesting man. And I definitely 100% believe that he killed himself in prison, and I have no questions or doubts about any of it.
I'm learning from the monetization guru. So.
And now he's met up with Jeffrey Epstein in purgatory, where they will spend their days discussing various things.
Wow. Unbelievable.
His life really was like the Tiger King. I mean, his life was really kind of crazy there in the last 10 years or so.
Oh, don't get Nick started on Tiger King, because I saw him in the chat when the Tiger Queen was up here.
No.
No, you know what's interesting though is it turns out that his life wasn't as interesting as he made it out to be over the past couple years.
That's typical.
He's been living in apparently in a Bitcoin mining hotel in Spain, and so all these times when he was saying he was like all over the world and stuff and broadcasting from different places where he would dock his yacht or whatever. Turns out, he was just in Spain.
Okay, how many people do you know, Nick, who were accused of murdering their neighbor because their neighbor killed their dog? How many do you know?
Yeah, that's true.
No, that's true. Dog telling them.
Yeah, that's
just Rand Paul's neighbor or whatever.
Oh yeah.
I actually have had McAfee on, if anybody wants to see it. So I do say his personality lends a lot of doubt to a desire to kill himself. He very, very much liked attention. I can tell you firsthand from an interview how much
He seemed to have joie de
enjoyed
vivre,
attention.
like a lot of joie de vivre from what I saw.
Oh, just really, really larger in life. I consider him like a modern day pirate. I really do. But he is the type, he wanted to go to trial. I really believe that. He wanted to have because the cameras would be on him going in and out. And, he would do anything he could just to stick it to the government. He was old, 75, very hard living. Yeah, somebody's saying he was a narcissist. I would say he had narcissistic tendencies that I saw all day. I can't, say for sure. I'm not a shrink, just like I'm not a lawyer. So I just talk to lawyers and I talk to shrinks. And I talk to McAfee. Is that related? Anyway. I
would be involved in any trial involving him.
This is true. This is
And
true.
I don't want to
Great
sound like
theater.
I didn't like the guy. I have strong doubts about him killing himself. I think that's been one of the interesting revelations of Epstein is we've got a lot of people suddenly remembering that governments act in very, very weird ways and powerful people act in very, very weird ways. And Epstein was this interesting lightning rod where everyone goes, wait a minute. And of course, it comes out later that the guards who were involved, they falsified the records, which everybody knew that they did that. But no charge or no convictions for them.
Of course, because you listen, if we don't know what happened to Epstein, you know what I'm saying? It's a conspiracy that's really not a conspiracy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
That's the new. By the way, when I hear conspiracy theory now, I actually take that term as being like probably true, like because everything the right says now is just another conspiracy theory, and that's what the term means now. It means probably true.
Laughs and Alex Jones.
The Wuhan, what is it? The Wuhan lab theory. They had me convinced that was just total conspiracy theory stuff, and then it was like, oh, it's not. Wow,
Yeah.
wow.
Telling you.
Good question here on it, and I think I can answer it really quickly. How do we not know any details of him yet? No federal investigation? Why would there be? He was in Spain. He was going to be extradited, but he wasn't. So he was not in U.S. custody, which is very helpful. Why would we bother looking into it? That they're a sovereign country. They are an ally and very respectable. So I don't see any problem here. Do you?
And the CIA definitely does not ever act in foreign. The FBI does not act in foreign countries, so no reason to think anything weird happened there.
Yep. I mean, it's funny because it's perfect timing in the sense of his extradition was approved. So, oh my, I can't handle it. I'm not going to face the charges. I off myself. Or it could be, oh, we were just going to sit here and cool our heels. He may not be extradited. We're not going to do anything.
Well,
looks like he's extradited. Maybe I
am curious because I don't know enough about this story. Who was afraid of him testifying that had a motive to
he
see?
had 31 terabytes on federal officials.
31 terabytes. What does that mean? 31 terabytes.
31 terabytes. That'd be the equivalent of, I don't know, probably 3,000 laptops.
3,000 laptops of information
Hunter.
about officials.
Hunter Biden laptops, 30.
Right.
Take
I
Hunter
understand.
Biden's laptop and just the data amount. But yes, he played around potentially. This is the problem with McAfee, though. He was very paranoid, very brilliant, very strange. So he's like all these things at once. I think he was lying half of the time. He was telling the truth the other half. You really didn't know where you were with him, but he had a lot of money.
Right.
And a lot of access. He was one of the security pioneers in creating,
McAfee.
hacking
McAfee, yeah.
infrastructure.
In distributing viruses to people and having them pay for it. I
Right.
hate antivirus programs. Absolute garbage. Thank you, John McAfee.
Yeah.
There you go. He found a way to profit. So, I mean, and he was wired into a lot of people, but everything about the guy, it was just crazy. I mean, genuinely crazy guy.
But before we get out of here, do you guys have you guys seen the new drama now between the Black Conservatives on YouTube, with
which
Brandon
ones?
Tatum versus the Amazing Lucas. If you guys
No.
haven't seen it, it's all right. Yeah,
No.
there's like a huge
Amazing
fight between,
Lucas, I don't-
between them
Tatum
two.
and Luke. Oh, so is Lucas clout chasing?
No, well, Lucas actually was bigger than Tatum before, but Lucas has done like these now major videos calling Tatum an idiot, saying he's stupid, all this other stuff, and then Tatum's doing videos calling Lucas a sellout. It's crazy. But I thought you guys were up on it, but they're like going at each other like hardcore. Lucas lost like maybe 50,000 subs. Like it's crazy.
He was already having some issues because of, I think, either a Chauvin take or a Trump take or whatever, and he had I had heard that a lot of people were mad at Lucas before. This is months ago. But I don't know, I haven't followed up with him.
Yeah, I think he's mad at the Chauvin take from Tatum. He's mad at the Ashley Babbitt take because obviously Lucas is very, very, anti-police. The police kills a black person, it's the police's fault, no matter what the situation is, right?
Right.
Police fault,
Yeah.
but except for the last one with the girl with the knife. Lucas actually said, we gotta think of, this a hero cop. But all the other ones, he's on the other side. So I think he's got a problem with, and it's he's got a problem with Tatum's position on all these things. So it's a weird little thing. yeah, he has a problem with Tatum. Well, but like especially with the Ashley Babbitt. Like if you watch his latest video, he goes out and says, yeah, Ashley Babbitt was justifiably killed. And, if you don't think that you're racist, like that's kind of where he was going with it. And then the other side, Tatum was like, oh, she was killed. So it's an interesting little dynamic to see how two conservatives can have, differences on the issues and still be conservative. But I think
I think it's interesting that you call Amazing Lucas a conservative.
He's really not.
Yeah, he says straight up, I'm a conservative.
Okay,
This
he
is my
says that,
beliefs.
but I think whenever he talks about issues of race, to me, he sounds like he loses the plot, which is similar to me. Like it's hard for me to talk about Israel and Palestine and remain objective. And I think when it comes, and I recognize that, and that's why I hate dealing with it. And I'll only deal with it like sometimes I'll bring my father on because he has expertise there, but. I find the same thing with my feeling of Amazing Lucas is when he starts dealing with race, it's too personal
Blind
for
spot.
him. And he has a blind spot because it's too personal for him. So, but that's my thought on it.
Well, I think they're both on the edge. Like for instance, there's some instances, if you just look at the evidence, there's certain instances that yes, police are justified. There are others where they're not. And I think you have to kind of sift through them. But I think if you're looking at it from one perspective, a perspective of all police are bad, then you're always going to find that there is an issue.
You should never argue from a conclusion, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, if you say what you just said, all police are bad. So if that's my stance, then yeah, every argument I'm going to backtrack to hit my conclusion. You're not really an honest broker, so I can't take you seriously. Not anymore. I'm sorry. I mean, one thing I respect about you, Nate, and I don't agree with you half the time, or no, some of
Half
the time.
the time. Oh my God.
Some of the time.
No, it's just big.
But I like the fact you do think about things and arrive to a conclusion from a starting point versus the reverse.
Right.
And that drives me insane.
Yeah, like I know there's probably going to be a lot of people who disagree with a lot of my takes, but one thing I try to do is just say this is the reason why I think this way, and we can disagree on how we get there, but this is the reason why. And the one part about it is that I love Twitter because my liberal friends, you'll see them, they'll be bashing me horribly about like January 6th. I say it's not the people's fault who stormed. I say it was the government's fault for not having any cops there to protect the building.
Or
right?
it's the government's fault for sending in to some of their people to rile people up.
No, listen. There is no reason why you got 20,000 people walking up to a gate with only 5 cops. That's ridiculous, right? And you have these people coming. So I'm saying, but my liberal friends, you can't blame the cop. I'm like, no, it's their fault. They didn't have anybody there. Of course, if I know I got 10,000 people coming and only got 2 people there, then there's a problem with security, right? It's just obvious. But then on the other side, when I say I don't like Trump, then the conservatives hate me. So, I love where I'm at because I feel like I'm free. I don't have to say what people like. I just can say what I honestly believe. And if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't.
You're free as long as you're not Nick's prisoner.
Nate, I love
Then you
January
become
6th that you have lefties in Congress actually praising cops.
Yeah.
Think about that. Because of that day, some love was shared for the blue.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about Biden and his statements about insurrections and and you got to have F-15s and all that stuff.
Oh
Did
my
you
God.
see that? That was
No, I avoid
that was magical. That was a magical thing. He makes the most incorrect statements possible. This is his gun takes, of course. He says at the time of the founding and the time of the writing of the Second Amendment, you couldn't privately own a cannon. It's like
Not true.
Joe. Yes, you could. And in
Yeah,
fact,
I mean, it's just hard.
today, right
You can.
now, all of you can go out and buy a cannon unregulated. They are not regulated by the National Firearms Act. They are not firearms. You can go buy a can, buy 2, buy 10, buy 50, put them on your house. Just line them up towards the street. What you can't have is the shells. They're an explosive munition, and every cannon shell would be regulated by the NFA. You'd have to have your $200 tax stamp on it. It gets very expensive to have lots of ammo. But a muzzle loading cannon, now we're not talking a howitzer. That's different. That's but a muzzle loading cannon, you can still own them today. They're still not regulated. And Joe Biden's like, you couldn't buy these at the time of the Second Amendment. It's like, Joe, what are you talking about? Where do you think they got the cannons for the Revolutionary War, for the Civil War? They got them from private owners.
Yeah,
That's
even
where they
people on
had-
the ships. Yeah. He again. They're still talking about defunding women's soccer because it's Joe Biden is a mess. I can't. Don't even get me started.
Hey, he's your president. Anyway,
That's true. That's true.
I guess this is the history of the conflict, which I didn't really pay attention to. Kim Klacik versus Candace Owens got the guns blazing. Of course, Candace Owens had to get in it. Sparked by
Juneteenth.
2.0, aka Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens, regarding Juneteenth. And then Black Conscious Conservatives versus Black Conservatives Incorporated. Then Lucas versus Tatum. Oh my God. Why not just go back to Emily Dreadful and what's that other one? Who's the
Emily
girl?
Artful and Creepshow Art.
Yeah. What's the difference?
I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy. But I think we need a little conflict to find out what the real issues are in the community.
Yeah, well, and this is where I get the grift. I don't have a Winston, but I have a Gizmo.
Oh my God. Well, at the end of the day, you know what? I enjoy disagreeing with people, but I enjoy also understanding why the other side thinks the way they do. And I think that's one thing that we all sometimes fail to realize sometimes. Why do people believe what they believe, and why are they coming to these conclusions? And I think that's the more important piece of it. Not just, saying you're wrong, but why? Why do I think you're wrong?
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe you can see points along the way. It's like, okay, well, agree with this part, but not with that part, or whatever. I mean, it helps shape our thinking. But good news. Since we haven't solved all the problems today, I'm going to bring this full circle. Remember early on when I talked about grifters who are selling, race problems and every other problem in the world? If they didn't have a problem, they couldn't profit. Well, now that's going to be me. Since we still have problems,
Yes.
you guys have to come back and we have to do more shows, and hopefully we can profit.
Always works for me.
Amen
I
to
just
that.
hope we can discuss that all rocks are vegans. That's all we,
Nick, you're
'cause-
going to that again with me. Oh my
What
God.
does
If
that
they-
even mean?
look.
What are you
If
talking about?
look, a meat
Twitter
eater
beef
is
that I
not,
got.
a meat eater is not a vegan. A non-meat eater is a vegan. Rocks don't eat meat. Ergo, all rocks are vegans.
Well, you're also the guy
Ipso
who says
facto,
Australia.
post hoc, post
Hey,
propter, ergo, propter hoc.
And Nick, you're a dishonest arbiter now. I don't know if you've seen Twitter. You're dishonest. You're a horrible person. I'm like, it's like what? Oh my God.
Every day I open my Twitter and I look at that and I'm still getting notifications on that thread and I'm like, oh my God, why are you still talking about
Who
this?
said that? Where'd you
Here's
get
the
that?
mic drop. Here's the mic drop from the chat, guys.
Nice.
Disgusting.
No. There was Nick is talking about the case I was covering when I first started out here on YouTube. I had like
Right.
500 subs,
Steve
and
McCray.
it was actually an interesting case. Now, what happens from the beginning? I always said Steve should get paid, but when they don't like what you say when you're doing the coverage, they come after you. So the same thing happened with Emily D. Baker and Without a Crystal Ball. Like, they put you in their case, they do all this crazy stuff, right? And it was funny because I told Emily, I was like, Emily, be careful because these YouTubers get crazy, and next thing you know, you'll see your name in their case. So that's what happened. So now, because he didn't like my coverage, we had a debate on some other stuff like the definition of atheism. So now he said everything from I'm worse than a serial rapist.
Who is this?
To I'm an unethical lawyer. This guy named Steve McRae. He says I'm well, now he's saying Nick is unethical too. So Nick's got that with me.
I gotta set this guy.
He can get in line. I got a lot of people saying that. I'm not worried about it.
I'm worse than the sex offender, the serial rapist. I'm dishonest lawyer. I've given this guy legal advice. Like they just say everything that no matter if it's his girlfriend, right? I've harmed his girlfriend worse than us. It's like it gets crazy. And I've never met his girlfriend or even him in real life. I just just tweeted at them a couple of times. So so Nick then opens up the can of worms and says, "Hey, why do you have a problem with this guy?" So then we get into this whole big thing. But then at the end of the day, they then start saying Nick is dishonest and dishonorable, and Nick is now also worse than a serial blankist now too.
Oh, nice.
So me and Nick are now together worse than a serial blankist because Nick doesn't understand that rocks are atheists. That's right.
My joke was the guy came to this weird conclusion within the context of the debate. I better be careful and talk about it within the context because he clearly doesn't think all rocks are atheists, but that rocks are atheists by using a reductive logic. And so so my post was literally, I said, "Hey, what's your beef with Nate the lawyer? I think that guy rocks." That was it. It was just a dad joke. And then I got pages and pages and pages and days of notifications.
Nick, you should say, go into a debate with him about how Australia is not real. Serious, start that up on Twitter and see the reaction.
No, but the funny thing is, Nick, like the guy was like, they were like, "Oh, why don't you go on Nick's show and explain it?" I'm not going on Nick's show because he does not. It's like, but hold on, you just now, it's like it's always that I'm able to hide. When Nick says, "Okay, come on the show, I'll speak to you." I don't want to go on Nick's show and speak to him because he's dishonest. Oh well, hell, have Nate on the show. Oh, Nate, because he has Nate on the show. It's like you can't win.
Well, to be fair, I never invited that guy on the show because I found him to be a little bit boring, and I don't think it would be that interesting of a show, to be honest. I'd much rather just talk to Nate about something that's not that.
Oh my God, you're gonna have now 1 million tweets going back and forth about this now. Right? Oh my God, he said he's really dishonest. It's like come on.
All right, somebody clip this. I could use a little bit more juice. Go ahead.
Oh no, this will be clipped, and we're going to see it on Twitter. This is what Nick said. This is what Nate said. It's like
yes. I love showing up on Twitter.
Yeah, but you know what though?
Australia.
But I saw Nick. I saw you got that interview with Vic, right? So you and him are cool now, right?
Vic and I have been cool for 2.5 years.
Yeah,
there it is.
Cool.
Awesome.
It's amazing what happens when someone is drowning, right? And you throw them a life preserver.
They don't hate you.
They shockingly don't.
Yeah.
So yeah, you set up a GoFundMe and that allows them to get their side of the story out in a very public way. They don't hate you, and
Well, on that happy note, we haven't solved the world. Unstructured.locals.com, NateTheLawyer.locals.com, RekietaLaw.locals.com. Happy birthday, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was very thoughtful. And also patreon.com/Good Lawgic.
Don't do Patreon, please.
Stop. Just you know what? I don't need it. I don't need it.
And you're going to go into bed with another company that's as bad or worse that deplatforms people and
until they start fingering me, I have to assume that they're going to be honorable people. I mean, fingering me as being a bad guy. Fingering is you're a bad guy. What is wrong with you people? I'm saying I fingered that criminal over there. That's like not like I'm fingering like a criminal.